IVM.
Hi everybody, just wanted to ask everyone for a quick favor. We're running a brand survey right now and would really appreciate it if you could let us know what you think about the advertising on IVM. Go to ivmpodcast.com/survey and do let us know. As part of this, we'll be selecting 10 random participants and sending them some IVM swag, so do fill out those surveys.
Hello and welcome to Simblified, and this time we are coming to you from the metaverse. Tony, your avatar looks amazing.
Yeah, much better than my real world personality. So I'm definitely all for metaverse.
All for metaverse, right? So that's exactly the thing. So all these people on Twitter, they're like, "Oh no, metaverse is bad, and we should not be spending so much time in the virtual world." And I'm just rewinding to myself as a geeky, like 16-year-old engineering college student, like, all this sounds great. Please, where do I sign up? Take my data. It's completely okay.
Yeah. Also, the key there is people are complaining on the internet about
and needless to say, that is meta in a very different sort of way. First off, Tony, I have to say that, so firstly, for our listeners, so we have made the mistake of just barging right into the topic without even considering that there are people who might be listening to us. Welcome to Simblified. This is a show where we try to, simplify things around us using a little bit of Wikipedia research and a lot of bad jokes. There are usually 4 of us over here, but it's just 2 of us for this particular episode. I am Chuck and
I'm Tony.
Yes,
and
well done.
You, dear listener, are welcome to join us.
We keep a rotating cast of it's like a board with it's like a company's board with a seat that is open for employees, so that way any of our listeners can come and join on the panel at any point of time.
Board games and all that.
Terrible. Anyway, so we are going to discuss in this particular episode Facebook's rebranding to Meta and Facebook's ambitions for something called the metaverse, what that means, what that's trying to distract from, because it seems like Facebook is sneakily trying to make us forget some of the things that it's been doing, and also what the larger implications of this could be for technology and, dare I say, humanity itself. But before that, before we get into all that, we usually start off with some segments that are beloved to Simplified listeners. So, Tony, a couple of weeks back, I was in Panchgani. It's a lovely little hill station close to Pune, and I just went there for a bit of a break. And after the thing, I just put out a nice tweet with a few pictures of the place and me make a picture of me making notes and everything. And I said, "Oh, what a nice place this was! Really needed the break and all that." And there were about 10 replies to this, most of which were like, "Hey, that looks really nice," or "Hey, where can I do this?" And one person replied, "What about your shitty podcast?" So, yeah. So now,
Which one?
Yeah. So this is a problem. Okay, so this is a problem. There was a part of me that wanted to say, which one of the 3 might you be referring to? But then I realized that might just be opening the doors for even more vitriol. So I just left it at that. So I was like, okay, so there are people who are pissed off with the show enough to write in like that. But what I also got during the same amount of time, I'm not kidding you, it's not the universe is trying to balance itself out. I got 5 profundities that week from listeners of Simplified. So for all of you people, please keep sending them in. Those profundities are the only things that keep us sane. I once went to an open mic show, which was hosted by Puneet Pania. And it was like a typical open mic. There were 6 comedians and there were 3 people in the audience, like your typical open mic show in Bombay. Yeah. And when Puneet was addressing the crowd, he looked at the 3 people and said, "Please laugh because you're the only people standing between these guys and a rope tonight." And I feel that the same thing about Simplified listeners. So please keep sending us your profundities, because then, that's the only way that we know that this is actually a show where people actually listen and not an excuse for the 4 of us to get together. I'd like to read out one of those profundities. This was sent in by Karanasaurus on Instagram. Thank you so much for this, Karan. This is fantastic. This has nothing to do with the topic that we're going to discuss, but this is great. Why do the bride and groom go around the fire 7 times in marriage rituals? Answer given by a maths teacher. Each circle consists of 360 degrees. Only number from 1 to 9 which cannot divide 360 is 7. So the bride and groom go around the fire 7 times, ensuring that nothing can divide their relationship.
Wow.
And then you have the word maths with the folded hand emoji twice on both sides. This is the profundity. This is the kind of stuff that our fans send us in. When New York Times reporters and all put their email IDs out there and say, send us tips and send us anonymous quotes and things like that. This is what we expect from our listeners.
We don't need anything else. We should start like a profundities of simplified handle, like depths of Wikipedia.
Wow, profundities of simplified. That's actually a great idea. That is actually an astonishingly good idea. So if anyone over here would, since it's very clear that we are not launching our microwave repair service from Polynesia, if anyone would like to see this handle, profundities of, I would not be surprised if somebody actually creates it. Remember, one of our listeners actually went and made that page for Srikeit, the secret life of Srikeit. Okay, so thank you, Karan, for sending that in. And for everyone else, yes, please keep sending us the best of your WhatsApp forwards from your family WhatsApp group. So, Tony, let's get to the topic today. On Thursday, which was 28th of October, Facebook announced its intention to become a metaverse company and rebranded itself Meta. And I quote Zuckerberg, I've been thinking a lot about her identity. Over time, I hope we are seen as a metaverse company. I don't think this is an entirely bad thing, because anything that moves the reputation of Facebook away from what it's known for right now.
Oh, wait. You didn't do the stop code thing. This is I thought this is still
stop quote thing. Zuckerberg is still
what
talking.
Is this moment of reality?
Yeah. Who knows what is real and what is inside quotes anymore? Anyway, metaverse company stop quote. So, Tony, I don't think this is a bad thing, because anything that distracts from what Facebook is actually, I think any sort of rebranding right now will work. Like, they can rebrand themselves as a company that tortures kids by actively asking them to do deforestation by recreationally burning coal in the face of endangered animals while making them listening to episodes of Simblified on the side. And that would be an improvement over what they are right now. So,
to be fair, we did cover the metaverse a while back. They did, put in their ambitions early on. And I mean, apart from the cynicism, right? I don't. I think it's a very, very bold move for someone like Facebook to say, listen, I mean, this is not just the thing that we're going to be doing. There is something beyond it. Then I don't think it'll be any less intrusive or damaging to the next generation as Facebook has been, but at least they are open about it. So
and I totally agree with that. And let's face it, over the next half an hour or so, we are completely going to bash Facebook. So let's just get this out of the way. I actually think this is one of the boldest moves by a technology company, or at least one of the most ambitious moves by a technology company. Dare I say, since Apple dropped the iPhone in 2007.
They dropped it.
I mean, what I mean.
Okay, cool.
The kids call it that way. The kids.
This is actually, very, very far. I mean, in some senses, visionary, right? That they are willing to back up everything that they've been doing and tying it all together with a very, very ambitious plan. And they are also upfront with saying that it won't be built by one company.
Yeah.
Basically saying that, go and build your own parts and we'll acquire you along the way.
Shareholder capitalism.
But I think it's very, very bold. But let's get into it.
So I mean, we're just discussing what really is out there and what our thoughts about this could be. So let's see what else could. Just to quote New York Times, who reported this, I mean, so did everybody else. The move punctuates how Mark Zuckerberg, the chief executive, plans to refocus his Silicon Valley company on what he sees as the next digital frontier, which is the unification of disparate digital worlds into something called the metaverse. At the same time, renaming Facebook might help distance the company from the social networking controversies it's facing, including how it's used to spread hate speech and misinformation. A noble goal, but we will we will not focus on that, at least for now. So what does this mean? So one way of thinking about it is, I think a lot of people are like confused about what a in-between version of the metaverse could be. So I say forget that and just close your eyes and think about what the fully realized version of a metaverse could be. Like I am thinking we are plugged into some sort of a chair like this, like Matrix, like you're plugged with something into your head, and then you are sitting and you're very conscious about activities that you're doing, but you are, for all practical purposes, living inside another world. You are operating in virtual reality. We are doing this recording. We will be sitting maybe limp on our respective chairs, but our avatars will be meeting at the virtual IVM studio, which we can customize. And I will, I might see a different studio than you will. And unfortunately for our producer, we are still the same brains and the same people. But apart from that, I think that's what. Yeah, we could look cooler. Yeah,
and sound cooler. I guess.
So the embodied internet. I think that's an interesting phrase that Zuckerberg used somewhere. This is basically the embodied internet, where you are now. I think it's kind of self-explanatory. Your avatar goes to office, hangs out with friends virtually, attends concerts, and while the physical you is probably on a comfortable recliner or something. So that's. I guess.
Yeah, I mean, another definition that I liked, I know you didn't particularly take to it, was something I saw yesterday by this person called Shan, VP on Twitter, who basically said, don't think of the metaverse. Don't think of the metaverse as a space, but think of it as, time-based, right? So if humans in the past used to spend 100% of their time in the real world, when TVs came in and we started mindlessly watching it, it was probably like 85% in the real world and 15% in the TV. Then the computer came and probably a third of your time was spent on the computer. And now we are in our phones more than 50% of the time.
Yeah.
Which means your sort of virtual existence in some senses matters more than your real world existence, because that's where you're spending more of your time.
Yeah.
And, take this to its logical conclusion, where about 90% of your time is spent in the virtual world. And therefore, everything that happens in the virtual world matters more to you than what happens in the real world in terms of how you appear, what you show off, etc., etc. And therefore, I thought that was a much simpler version of the metaverse to understand, because otherwise there are too many moving parts. So basically, if you're going to spend a lot of your time virtually, then what are the possible things that can move around it, and what are the new economies that can spring up? What are the challenges that can come?
No, I completely, by the way, I completely agree with all that Shan said. And I think this is a brilliant way of looking at it. And I love that percentage part that he mentioned as well. And I think it's very obvious that we're getting there. I just thought he packaged it with a whole bunch of fluff, saying that it's a moment in time and things like that. That you can say about pretty much anything, right? Simplified is a moment in time.
As a past advertiser, you can cover it.
Yeah, no, but I completely agree. We are doing more things virtually. But I think more than the doing more things virtually, it's the signaling part of things, right? Which is we are in some sense the digital goods that we have to show off have become kind of more important in some ways. We are seeing this right now, of course, with the whole NFT craze that's happening, which we will talk about a little later. But I think more than that, look at how we're leading our lives. I know, for example, a photographer once told me that he is desperate to accumulate Instagram followers, not necessarily for engagement or, they'll buy his prints or something, but because potential gallery owners look at Instagram numbers as a sign of popularity. So he doesn't matter if it's bots and things like that. He just wants a number to show. Similarly, people don't ask for CVs anymore. Now it's all about how you look on LinkedIn, the type of things that you say on Twitter, etc. And from there, yes, it's very easy to draw a very logical conclusion to what the metaverse could be.
Yeah. Hopefully not for CVs and LinkedIn profundities. But definitely for even like when you're cast in small roles in films or whatever, you need to have a certain Instagram following, because otherwise you're not really adding value, right? So in some senses, that's already sort of been monetized in some senses.
Yeah, it's an interesting future that we are headed towards.
Did you ever put your Twitter follower count on your CV?
Twitter follower count on my, oh gosh. Okay, so here's the thing. Okay, so here's the thing. I would do that if the things I spoke about on Twitter were relevant to what I was applying for. The point is, I can say, hey, what I have.
Mistake you've made.
What?
Classic mistake you've made. Misunderstanding.
No, but here's the thing. If I'm applying for, say, a role in marketing or something, and if I put, hey, I have 12K followers on Twitter or whatever it is, people say, oh, he must be some marketing influencer. They go there, they see what they are most likely to see bad jokes, rock music recommendations, and me dissing on advertising. So it's probably in my best interest to draw attention away from that. Anyway, there are lots of areas. There are lots of like you, Tony, rightly said. This is not something that was sprung on us out of the blue. Out of the blue. See what I did there? But it's something that Facebook has been hinting at for a while. Arguably, starting with the acquisition of Oculus a few years ago. There are some more details on this. But let us take a meta break right now, Tony. I think let us get our meta listeners to check out some meta advertisers, and then we will be back with meta part 2. I have no idea what any of that meant, but hey, that's the metaverse. See you guys on the other side of this break.
$100. That's all it takes to begin your journey with Bitcoin and Ethereum. No, really. With CoinSwitch, you can start investing in over 100 cryptocurrencies with just 100 rupees. On top of that, there are zero charges for deposits and withdrawals, so you can trade, buy, sell, however and whenever you want. All of this, plus their extremely intuitive interface, makes CoinSwitch the perfect app for beginners in the crypto space. But don't take my word for it. Just download CoinSwitch for free and try it out for yourself. If you'd like more information on cryptocurrencies, tune into a show about crypto with me, Rohan Joshi, my new adventure on IVM podcasts. CoinSwitch, kuch to badlega.
Welcome back to part 2 of our look at the metaverse. So,
before we go further, can we discuss the logo?
The logo, yes, please.
Is that a rubber band or is it meant to be a Mobius strip? I saw it. I didn't read up about it.
So I hate that my mind has gone over here, but Casey Newton, who used to write for The Verge and now runs a great newsletter called The Platformer, he had one look at the logo and said, guess what every high school student from a Menlo Park high school is going to be doing with a marker to this logo. And I will now leave it to the listener's imagination, where just a couple of addition of dots could make that logo a little more colorful.
The Silicon Valley, what is the name? Gavin.
Do
you remember?
Gavin of Hooli. In fact, somebody actually did tweet out yesterday that on Wednesday that spoiler alert, Facebook is going to be renaming as Hooli. that would have been incredible. The logo actually I kind of like it, to be honest. I think there's a lot. I think logos in general get a lot of flack just because there's something new and different. But I actually kind of like the logo. It's simple. It's easily drawable. As a brand marketer, I think that is something that can very easily be extended to various physical and digital products. And I also think it will look very cool in the metaverse. Just imagine, Tony, just like how you have these I love Mumbai, I love Lokhandwala, in your case, I love Wadala, all those kind of things. Just imagine in the metaverse, there will be I love that metaverse thing. And that'll be pretty cool, right?
It's pretty cool.
Yeah. So it's a free idea for you, Zaki. Okay, so Mark Zuckerberg has laid out several areas where the metaverse would be applicable, including video gaming, fitness, and work. Lots of questions there by itself, but we'll address those. So here are a few things that's already happening. So I think there are some 6 or 7 points over here. One is Horizon Home, which Facebook is making the home screen on its Oculus Quest. Oculus, by the way, is, for those who don't know, is a virtual reality headset that Facebook acquired a few years ago and widely known to be the best virtual reality headset out there, competing with HTC Vive and of course those cheap cardboard things that you can get from Amazon for 500 rupees. By the way, did you know Oculus is almost a unicorn just by itself? Wow. Its revenue was close to $800 million for Facebook.
And that's just from device sales.
Yeah, that's just from device sales, apparently. I'm guessing device plus software. I'm not quite sure of what the split was, but that is, again, just a drop in the ocean for Facebook, whose other 33 point whatever billion dollars came from advertising. So that being said, Oculus, that division, the hardware division, is growing at almost 200%. Those of you who have observed the early days of Amazon Web Services might want to keep an eye out on this particular thing.
It's almost big enough now for Byju's to acquire.
Oh gosh. The question is Byju's big enough for Facebook to acquire? Okay, that pause was just us thinking of how dystopian this future could get.
Because, I mean, education is probably also a frontier for.
Oh yeah, 100%. Not to mention.
You heard it here first.
You heard it here first, and education becomes the proverbial lipstick on the pig, right? It's the nice thing for a company that's so mired in scandal right now to say, look, we are at least educating young minds and all that. The same guys who incite genocide, they will also be teaching you that a plus b whole square is a square plus 2ab plus. Sorry, I think I forgot. I think I need to take a Byju's course myself. But let's go back to what Facebook is doing right now. So there is something called Horizon Home, which is Facebook is making the home screen of Oculus Quest more social, allowing friends to gather, watching videos together and dive into games and apps. That seems kind of logical. So creating sort of like a news feed within Oculus itself. Then there is Messenger calling in virtual reality that will start soon. Then they will be bringing more two-dimensional apps to virtual reality. This includes things like Slack and Dropbox. I'm not quite sure what a virtual reality Slack would be, but that's yet another dystopian future. And okay, Slack, I can still imagine people might want to huddle around office and watch, but Dropbox? Like, what virtual reality can you do in Dropbox? Do you really want to see like a gamify or a three-dimensional version of your file coming in, I suppose?
Or, I guess you're just like collaborating on things.
Yeah. Be interesting to see what's going to end up happening. Facebook actually. So, have you ever used any of those augmented reality filters on Instagram? Those effects, they're called effects. The kids call them effects. Yeah.
Not intentionally, I would
not
say.
Intentionally, exactly. That's how you know you're over 30, right? Oh gosh, okay. So the thing is, those things are actually reasonably simple to create. So Facebook has, if you go to the Facebook development site, there is something called Spark. It's an AR studio where it's actually fairly easy to make these things. They have some presets, and even without coding knowledge, it's actually fairly easy to make something. Those stickers that stick onto your head and keep rotating various lines of text. I'm sure there's a technical term for it, but I know what it is. And other things like identify the face, and you can do this, identify a background, and then you can do this. So a little bit of basic non-coding programming, and you can actually make it happen.
But even just imagine like something like GeoGuessr.
Yeah, that would be amazing. A virtual GeoGuessr.
GeoGuessr, for those of you who don't know,
highly addictive game.
Yeah, basically you're dropped in a random location based on Google Street View photos. You're supposed to scroll.
Yes, and it's actually I've seen various versions of that game before, but where GeoGuessr does it right is the packaging, right? It's like you have 2 minutes, or there's a battle royale where you are pitted against random people from around the world. There are themes like by McDonald's restaurants, by cricket stadiums, by roads, by concert venues. So it's kind of nice actually, or like Harry Potter. So it's kind of nice. So I can fully imagine something like that getting a shot in the arm in the sort of metaverse. Okay, what else? There's the Horizon Marketplace. On the augmented reality front, Facebook is adding hand and body tracking with Spark AR tools, exactly what I said right now, as well as Polar, which is a new app that allows people to create augmented reality filters without needing to code. To spur usage of its new tools and features, Facebook is creating a $150 million fund, which seems impressive, but also seems extremely low given, the numbers that we are used to. I blame it all on Byju's and quarterly earnings. Like if Facebook's made revenues of 33 billion, you feel that they should be spending a little more than 150 million but they know better.
If Zuck drops $150 million, should he like bend down to pick it up?
Exactly. Oh, and then lastly, there is something called Project Cambria. During the event, Facebook reviewed a new high-end consumer headset that it says will be released next year, along with a high-end price tag, higher ender than the Oculus. That's interesting. The headset
that's a really difficult name that they've chosen, Cambria.
No, it's a project. It's a project, right? So they will probably change it.
It just reminded me of Cambridge Analytica.
Cambridge. Oh yeah, it's like maybe it's sort of like a middle finger to them, like Cambridge Analytica. Like you tried, but we are still going strong and making more revenues than ever before. So Cambridge Analytica just put it together, and you have Cambria.
That's now a dated reference. Like Cambridge Analytica was so far back in Facebook's list of scandals that we.
Yeah, I know, right? And it actually wasn't all that long back. In some ways, the BP oil spill feels more recent than Cambridge Analytica. Anyway, so which improves color optics and all that. This list was taken from an article that Axios did on all the things that Facebook is doing. So this is going to take time, right? It's not something that's going to manifest immediately. It's like a 20, 30-year horizon. Is going to take a lot of hardware to get there.
Yeah, and see, that is really where Facebook is actually super good at, right? Is not in the legality, not in the space where.
Oh yeah, that they've not really cared about all that much.
Yeah, but building things in a manner that will revolutionize that industry, right? Like before Facebook social networks existed, digital advertising existed, and for all that we say that Zuckerberg stole code from the Winkle Y or whatever, none of them could have built it into the kind of machine that Zuckerberg has done or the Facebook team has done. And that's where they are really, really good, right? It's about taking things that already exist, but putting them together and building it into a manner that you can't get out of it. You can't escape it. So
absolutely.
It's going to be much sooner than 30 years, given how big they're betting on it, but also how they've come up front and said that this is going to define us and
absolutely. And to add to your point, absolutely, the biggest tech companies today weren't the first in their space, right? Google wasn't the first search engine, and Apple did. I mean, the iPod was far from the first MP3 player, and even the iPhone was far from the first. Maybe I think only Amazon was the first in its space in the sense in terms of what it did. But point absolutely taken. Okay, so just on this point about hardware and all that, right? So I'm going to quote a reply that Zuckerberg gave in an interview with Ben Thompson, who writes this fantastic newsletter called Stratechery. And Tony, I want you to see if you can spot the part over here where things escalate a little bit. Okay, so this is the answer. And the question was basically around hardware. What all do you think you'll need to physically build to get this thing out? And Zuckerberg says, and again, spot the part, you can see where this escalates. We are trying to help build a bunch of the fundamental technology and platforms that will go towards enabling this being the metaverse. There's a bunch on the hardware side. There's the VR goggles, there's the AR glasses, the input EMG systems. Like, excuse me. So EMG stands for electromyography. And when I Googled up what it actually was, I was desperately hoping that this was not it. But yes, it is those little circular patches that doctors will put on to you to see whether, when they're on the treadmill to see what your heart rate is and things like that. So I love how he's gone from VR goggles, AR goggles, and EMG systems. So
this I'm guessing would be for the
for the
arm movements and everything.
I hope it's just that. I hope it sticks to just the arm, because if it goes into the brain, we have already done a fairly freakish episode on Elon Musk's plans of getting all our brains wired up to the internet. So I have a feeling Neuralink and Meta are going to have a bit of a future together, because a lot of it seems to be aimed towards the same things. So that being said, there are a few things that are happening right now. Facebook's parent company, that is Meta, has been reportedly working on a smartwatch with a camera. Well, I guess that's one thing. A majority of their new hires are for virtual reality. This is something that's been happening for a while. So it's not like this has been sprung on us completely out of the blue. In fact, just recently, they announced plans to hire 10,000 people specifically working on the metaverse in the European Union. nice way to curry favor with that. Nicely done. And now, this is when you know the company is really serious about this shit. They have changed their stock ticker. Tony, do you know this? Yeah, they have changed from FB to MVRS, which stands for Metaverse. So that is a little bit. So let's take another break right now, and let's come back
and MVRS stock.
Buy some MVRS stock. Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, see, let's face it. You can either keep sitting and complaining about stuff like this, or
you can profit off it.
Or you can profit off it. I don't think there is any. I mean, the Twitter and the metaverse is there for signaling, but let's face it, we all need to eat, and this seems to be a fairly decent way to put food on the table, the virtual or otherwise. We'll take a break and we'll come back, and there are several questions to still answer about the metaverse, and let us try to find some answers on the other side of the break.
Whether you're an established sports person or a budding one, or simply a sports enthusiast, join us, Tanvi and Shlok.
We are two passionate pro badminton players talking policy, mindset and everything sport.
So tune in to The Millennial Athlete every Monday.
Only on the IVM Podcast Network.
Trust us, it's gonna be lit.
And welcome back to our discussion on the metaverse. Previously, we spoke about Facebook's plans to, or rather, Meta's plans to build a metaverse, the things that they are doing, the things that they're planning, from the virtual reality goggles to all sorts of medical devices that they want us to wear on ourselves. So there are several questions that this leaves. As with most big such announcements, especially from controversial companies, it ends up leaving more questions than answers. The first thing, and this is going to be very important from a technology point of view, is interoperability, which is the ability for, I'm guessing, different parts of the so-called metaverse is going to be built out by different tech companies, some of which probably don't even exist right now, some of which will be built out by existing companies, and things that they are doing. For example, Microsoft has something called Teams. Teams has a feature where it's not a very great feature right now, but it's your avatars are in a boardroom or a classroom or something like that. It's very easy to imagine what the metaverse version of that could be. So it's more likely the metaverse is going to be sort of like what the internet is today, where in the sense that nobody owns it, it's actually sort of like a concept, and then you have different companies that are building on top of that. Facebook might build the social part of that. Microsoft might build something else, and EA Sports might build the gaming part of it. Who knows what could end up happening? On that note, it might be interesting to see in the metaverse, the esports will be the actual Olympics, and and there in that Olympics, they'll be saying, oh, should we make actual football a sport? So anyway, so interoperability is one thing. And so here's where Facebook is sending out slightly mixed signals. During that call or during the announcement on Facebook Connect, where they spoke about the metaverse and basically launched it, Facebook said no one company, they tried to be very egalitarian. They said no one company will build the metaverse, but in other parts of the speech, they took jibes at Google and Apple. So that's that would be like me saying Simblified is hosted by the four of us, but I just want to make it clear that Naren is an old codger who just uses the show as an excuse to show off his knowledge of Yes Minister quotes, and Tony is frequently known to reduce the quality of the show by needlessly bringing in actual fact and reason to the discussion. So it feels like something like that to me. If you're going to get onto a project together, it's probably a nice idea to have everyone on board and not exactly take digs at their business model. Yeah. So interoperability.
In the current scenario, the front runners are Meta or Facebook and Microsoft, right? And they have already a consortium going called the XR consortium or something like that.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's in everyone's interest right now to make sure the metaverse comes into being, and then probably like the competition heats up once it's all.
Oh, so this is a problem for us to worry about in 2035 or something like that. All right, fair enough. Look forward to the antitrust hearings at that point of time.
When you actually have like metaverse physical battles between two CEOs to see who stakes claim over the land.
There's a lot of such fantasies that we can see playing out. That's amazing. That's that's very interesting. Okay. The second, so one is interoperability, obviously going to be very important.
And by that you mean if I have a specific avatar in the Facebook's part of metaverse, that can also apply in, let's say, Microsoft's.
Yeah.
And I don't have to create it twice.
You don't have to create it twice. And I think it goes beyond avatars. I think it will also have to do with currencies. It will also have to do with ownership of items. Like if I buy something in the Facebook metaverse, I should be able to use that in the Google's part of the metaverse. And that's the other thing, right? I think we are thinking that Facebook is going to build a VR version of Facebook. Which is going to be like, it's going to be like, I think we are thinking of it like different kind of video games. Like my player in Fortnite will not be equal to my player on Animal Crossing or FIFA or something like that. I don't think the metaverse is headed that way. It's somewhere between that and what the internet will grow up to be. So if that sort of makes sense, you probably have the same avatar with the same. I think there are going to be a lot of standards over this. Like this is what an avatar is, and that's going to be operating everywhere. At the same time, it's also then easy to imagine that there's going to be a dark web version of this, right? Where you have a darker version of the internet, where you have a dark avatar or something of that sort. And what if people want to remain anonymous? So yeah, there are lots of questions on that. But yeah, interoperability essentially means that I think the easiest way of picturing this is that you don't need to create different avatars or different profiles on various platforms.
Yeah. So if the room where I'm sitting is sort of like the metaverse, I can have an Xbox from Microsoft. I can have a laptop from Lenovo. I can have, I don't know, a phone from Android. And I'm the same person using all of them at the same time.
Yeah.
And the room is basically the metaverse.
The metaverse, yeah. There are so many possible analogies to draw, isn't there? Okay. The second question, and this is a particularly relevant one for this day and age, is who governs this entire thing? Is Facebook going to set the rules? Is it going to be sort of like the wild west? Is it going to be like the web right now, where okay, nobody owns the rules, but depending on which site or which part of the metaverse you're in, you are subject to certain rules. And what happens to governments? Like if my physical body is in India and I am breaking a rule of the United States where I happen to be in the metaverse, who governs that? Like, so if I'm, for example, having a blast, then it depends on, if I'm having a blast in the Canadian version of the metaverse, which seems completely fine, but am I still subject to rules? So that's where things get a little dodgy. And what happens when we know that jurisdiction and regulation eventually catches up, right? What was once a wild free internet is now being controlled by governments and regulators around the world. So what would the metaverse equivalent of that be is something that's a little unclear as of now. And
but I think the analogy would be similar to the internet, that the metaverse is decentralized and no one really has. There will be standards. I think there was one which was IEEE, which was called the Virtual World Standard for Systems or something. So, there will be some practically, by position, a governing body, but everything will become decentralized, right? And the key idea with interoperability is that while companies are building things, these shouldn't be silos that you can't access. So it's at least to me, it's very complicated.
Yeah, it is complicated. And one thing's for sure certain, VPNs are not going away anytime soon. So VPN for the metaverse looks like it's going to be a thing. All right. Third question then that I have is how exactly what is Facebook's business model behind this? Like it's all well and good to say that, we are building this metaverse and all that. So to me, there are several things. Right? The most obvious answer seems to be that they're just going to extrapolate what they're doing right now on our news feeds to the metaverse. You're going to see targeted advertising basis your interest and all that, probably through virtual billboards or whatever the case may be, on the homepage where you have different experiences that you can have. You may have some promoted experiences by brands and things like that. So I guess that is the most natural way of going about this. And other way of thinking about this is that the whole metaverse is just an excuse for them to sell more Oculus devices. So so hardware is their actual game. And I know this sounds very weird, but the metaverse is actually just content marketing for Oculus. It's an excuse for them to buy the Oculus devices itself, like PlayStation and video games in some sense. That could be one thing.
I mean, again, just going back to another thing Facebook is really good at is waiting for the time to monetize things, right? So they didn't have like a proper ad model when they started out, but eventually they built it, right? So I think it's too early to say what that thing will look like. But one new thing that will definitely come up is the creator economy within the metaverse. So if you want to hang out in the metaverse, then people need to create cool things, which means there's a scope for creators to do it, for them to be paid by people who are using it, and Facebook to take a cut. So
absolutely. And that's something actually I want to discuss a little later, because that whole part about what the creator economy meets the metaverse is very interesting. And finally, and this is something that's relevant for right now, is how different is this going to be for Facebook reputationally? So as much as Zuckerberg wants to insist that this has nothing to do with all the shit that's happening otherwise, how different is this going to be? Is this going to distract everyone, or are people still going to say, hey, this is at the end of the day still run by Zuckerberg, the guy who is responsible for everything? It's just because the name has changed, nothing's going to happen. Like some people have drawn comparisons with the time Philip Morris, the makers of the world leaders in cigarettes, renamed themselves to the Altria Group in 2001.
I don't short for alternate reality.
Oh. Wow. And you can't spell Altria without AI. From two different ways. So it's not going to make too much of a change for Facebook, I guess. But
yeah, I mean, see, again, the basic point is for as opposed to popular media or like the media that gets reported from the US, for Facebook, and I would imagine for Zuckerberg, it is very clear that they are in complete denial of the bad effects of Facebook, right? So they do not take ownership of that.
Yeah.
The analogy in some senses, because you mentioned, they teach A plus B the whole square, is that the same person who teaches you A plus B the whole square in school can also be a fundamentalist fanatic who is, harassing someone in the local neighborhood, and you will never get to know about it, right? So is it the fault of that person, or is it the fault of Facebook for enabling them, right? So very clearly they have divorced it to say that the problems are not exclusively caused by Facebook. In fact, we are doing the noble thing of putting restrictions in place, etc. So it's a different reality that they live in. So the reputation does not matter as long as people continue to use Facebook or Meta or their services, right? And very clearly, whether it's advertisers or consumers, we are all using Meta products, whether it's WhatsApp, Instagram, or Facebook, or not enough of us are not using it.
It's interesting. Like I'm imagining, like one thing that you said, just painted a picture in my head. I'm imagining like Zuckerberg in front of a bunch of reporters or congressional in the US Congress or something, and all of them are like, say, like, look at all the shit that you've been doing. It's almost like you people are living in an alternate reality. And Zuckerberg is like, that sounds interesting. And 2 days later, the metaverse was. So it's not like, just to be clear, it's not like Facebook is in financial trouble at all, even with the recent controversies. On Monday, 3 days before Meta was announced, Facebook said that revenue rose 35% to 29 billion in the first 3 months, ending in September, compared with the same time last year. Profits rose 17% to 9.2 billion, a sign of the social network's financial strength. etc. Despite all the controversies. And advertising revenue rose 33% to 28.3 billion. So 28.3 billion of the 29 billion. And the rest comes from other revenue, which is mostly Facebook's, the Oculus hardware. So that comes to around 734 million, but that rose by 195%. So keep an eye out for that particular thing.
And that's the fundamental problem, right? Since Naren's not here, I'll do the ranting.
Yeah.
Basically, is that for all of this posturing and everything that we write about morality, ethics, that, this and the other, ultimately the same papers and journalists equate success to monetary wealth, right? So structurally, capitalism is the problem, not Facebook. So if you are in one article sort of saying that Facebook is, killing or inciting genocide and causing so much distress in the world, you can't in the next column then say they're making, shit tons of money. Why don't you invest in it, right?
Yeah.
So there's a structural fundamental problem which is not Facebook's making.
Yeah. So it's a conflict that I'm sure many people have. Many advertisers will not be very fond of Facebook as a company and what they're doing. But the fact of the matter is it's the most efficient medium to do a lot of advertising in 2020, in 2021, whether they like it or not, and business needs to keep going. And if they decide to take a moral high ground and say, no, we are not going to use Facebook, then unfortunately they will be put out of business because their competitors are going to use it. So not quite sure how this is going to end. But
ideally we all need more Bill Wattersons, but we can't see him anymore. So how is he a role model when we can't see him? Yeah. So to sum up, right? I mean, there are some things Facebook's really good at, and which excites me is actually building new things and bringing possibilities to the world. The bad, obviously, is that they're terrible at regulation and handling their own beast. So let's see what the metaverse.
Before we end, that actually makes me sort of hopeful, like even cynics like you and me, that we will actually hold Zuckerberg in a positive light in about 10 years' time. I know it seems extremely far-fetched, but I'm sure there were a lot of people who in 2000 would have looked at Bill Gates and said, there is no way this guy is going to enter the new millennium as a hero. So let's see. We never know. Maybe this is the price that the world had to pay for the utopia that is actually going to be the metaverse. So,
I think our ad slots are open.
Yeah. So on that note, and also thank you for not making a reference to getting Meta. I got congratulated by about 10 people asking me whether I'm going to be rich now. Now that anyway. So since Naren is not here, Tony, I will leave it to you to sign off.
Yeah. So stay safe. Stay Bill Watterson.
And next week, we are going to continue this sort of discussion, but we are going to talk about what the future might look like, what the potential...
The future of the future.
The future of the future could be.
That's
so see you guys then. Bye.
Hey, everybody. It's been a great week on the IVM Podcast Network. On Cyrus Says, singer and music composer Osho Jain tells Cyrus all about his debut album, SAR. Want to find out all there is about mixed martial arts? On Simblified, Chuck, Naren, Tony, and Srikeit speak to Siddharth Rao, a national-level kickboxer. On All Things Policy, Sapni JK and Megha Pardi join Mihir Mahajan to discuss regulatory initiatives related to the use of AI. And on Football, Shipball, Siva Sapre and Karthik talk about the action-packed game week that it was. Man U, Barcelona, and India losing their games on the same day, Mo Salah's hat-trick, and a whole lot more. Do follow us on social media. We're IVM Podcast on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn. And remember, if you're enjoying this show or any of our other shows for that matter, please do tell a friend. And finally, we'd like to thank our sponsors this week, Cred, Bank of Baroda, Quarter, CoinSwitch, Kuber, Slay Coffee, Intel, Kotak Mahindra Bank, and Oxfam India. Thank you so much for making this possible.
Namaste, this is Cyrus Brocha. I am part of the government cancel culture program to remove rubbish off all the different streams available. So what we have is all the collected rubbish we put together on our show. It's called Cyrus Says. It's on IVM Podcast. You have to watch it and listen to it. It's on our app. It's on our website. It's on the YouTube channel. It's on Facebook. There are many different ways. Don't bother me and ask me how. You have to find out. We talk to different personalities. Many of them are known. Some are just people we meet downstairs and invite them up for chai. But the point is, it's fun and it's very therapeutic. So please join in and listen to Cyrus Says.